21. The Cocks and the Partridge. A man who kept some cocks at his house, having found a partridge for sale privately, bought it and took it back home with him to feed it along with the cocks. But as soon as the cocks pecked it and pursued it, the partridge, with heavy heart, imagined that this rejection was because she was of a foreign race. However, a little while later, having seen that the cocks fought among themselves as well and never stopped until they drew blood, she said to herself, "I'm not going to complain at being attacked by these cocks any longer, because I see that they do not have any mercy on each other either." This fable shows that sensible men easily tolerate the outrages of their neighbors when they see that the latter do not even spare their parents. 22. The Fisherman and the Tunny Fish. Some fishermen who'd gone fishing were very worried about the fact that they had caught nothing for a long time. Sitting in their boat, they wallowed in dejection. Just at that moment, a tunny fish, who was being chased, attempted to save himself and, with a loud thump, jumped accidentally into their boat. They seized him and took him back to their village, where they sold him. Thus, it is that what skill denies us, chance often gives us freely. 23. The Fisherman who Caught a Stone. Some fishermen were hauling in a large dragnet. As it was so heavy, they rejoiced and danced, imagining that the catch was a good one. But when they had pulled the dragnet to the bank, they found very few fish. It was mostly filled with stones and debris. The fishermen were deeply upset, less because of what had happened than because of the disappointment to their heightened expectations. But one of them, an old fellow, said to the others, "Don't be depressed, friends, for it would seem that joy has its sister affliction, and if we rejoice prematurely, then we should expect its contrary to follow. Neither should we delude ourselves into always expecting the same success, considering how changeable life is, but we should tell ourselves that there is never such good weather that a storm might not follow." 24. The Fisherman who Played the Flute. A fisherman who was a skilled flute player made his way to the sea one day, taking with him both his flute and his nets. Taking up a position on a projecting rock, he started to play the flute, thinking that the fish would be attracted by the sweetness of his tune and would, of their own accord, jump out of the water to come to him. But after much effort, no fish had come, and so he put his flute aside. He then picked up his casting net and threw it into the water, catching many fish. He took the fish out of the net and threw them on the shore. When he saw them wriggle, he cried out to them, "You bloody fish! When I played the flute you wouldn't dance, but as soon as I stopped you started up." Some people always do things at the wrong moment. 25. The Fisherman and the Large and Small Fish. A fisherman drew in his net from the sea. He could catch big fish, which he spread out in the sun, but the small fish slipped through the mesh, escaping into the sea. People of a mediocre fortune escape danger easily, but one rarely sees a man of great note escape when there is a disaster. 26. The Fisherman and the Pickerel. A fisherman who had lowered his net into the sea pulled out a pickerel. As it was very small, the pickerel begged the fisherman not to take it yet, but to release it on account of its small size. "But when I have grown," it went on, "and have become a big fish, then you can retake me. That way I will be more profitable for you." "But wait a minute," replied the fisherman. "I'd be a fool to let you go when I've got you in my hand, just in hope of better things to come, no matter how large you might become." This fable shows that it is foolish to forfeit the profit that is in one's hand upon the excuse that it is too small. 27. The Fisherman who Beat the Water. A fisherman was fishing in a river. He had stretched his nets across and dammed the current from one bank to the other. Then, having attached a stone to the end of a flaxen rope, he beat the water with it so that the fish would panic and throw themselves into the mesh of the net as they fled. One of the locals from the vicinity saw him doing this and reproached him for disturbing the river and making them have to drink muddied water. The fisherman replied, "But if the river is not disturbed, I shall be forced to die of hunger." It is like this in a city-state. The demagogues thrive by throwing the state into discord. 28. The Halcyon. The halcyon is a bird who loves solitude and who lives constantly on the sea. It is said that to protect herself from men who might hunt her, she builds a nest in the rocks of the bank or shore. Now one day, a halcyon who was broody went up onto a promontory and, seeing a rock which projected out over the sea, made her nest there. But some time later, when she had gone in search of food, a squall blew up. The sea rose up under the force of the strong winds, rising as far as the nest, which was filled with water, and the young birds were drowned. When the halcyon returned and saw what had happened, she cried out, "How unfortunate I am! I, who distrusted the ambushes which can take place on the land, and have taken shelter on the sea, find that from the sea there is even greater treachery." It is thus that some men, through fear of their enemies, come to rely upon supposed friends who are even more dangerous to them than their enemies were. 29. The foxes on the bank of the Meander River. One day some foxes assembled on the banks of the Meander with the intention of quenching their thirst. But as the flowing waters roared past them, they became fearful and got one another worked up about the dangers of the current, so that they did not dare approach it. Then one of the foxes thought he would show his superiority by mocking the others in a humiliating way about their cowardice. He made out that he was the bravest of them all. In order to prove his point, he jumped boldly into the rushing waters. As the current pulled him out towards the middle of the river, the others left on the bank called out to him, "Wait! Don't abandon us! Come back and show us how we can find the place where we can drink from the river without danger." The fox who was being carried away by the current shouted back to them, "I have an urgent message for the oracle of Apollo at Miletus. I want to take it to him now. I'll show you the place when I get back." This story applies to those who, by boasting, put themselves in danger. 30. The fox with a swollen stomach. A starving fox, having spotted a bit of bread and some meat that some shepherds had left inside the hollow of an oak tree, squeezed his way into the space and ate the food. But his stomach became swollen from so much food, and he could not get out again. He began to wail and bemoan his lot. Another fox passed by and heard these complaints. He went up to him and asked him what was wrong. When he learned what had happened, he said, "Ah, well, stay where you are until you become the size you were when you climbed in, and then you will be able to get out easily enough." This fable shows that time resolves difficulties. 31. The Fox and the Bramble. A fox who was jumping over a fence suddenly slipped. As he fell, he grabbed a bramble to stop himself from falling. The thorns of the bramble stuck into his paws and made them bleed. Crying out in pain, the fox said, "Alas! I turned to you for help, and now I am worse off." The bramble replied, "I'm afraid you've got it all wrong, friend. You tried to cling to me, but I'm the one who clings to everybody else." This fable shows that it is a foolish man who seeks help from those who, by their instincts, would rather do him harm. 32. The Fox and the Bunch of Grapes. A famished fox, seeing some bunches of grapes hanging from a vine which had grown in a tree, wanted to take some, but could not reach them. So he went away saying to himself, "Those are unripe." Similarly, certain people, not being able to run their affairs well because of their inefficiency, blame the circumstances. 33. The Fox and the Huge Serpent. A fox, seeing a huge serpent asleep beneath a fig tree by the roadside, greatly envied him his length. He wanted to equal him. He lay down beside him and elongated his own body until, overdoing it and stretching himself far too much, the silly animal split. And thus it is with people who compete with those stronger than themselves. They rupture themselves in striving to compete. 34. The Fox and the Woodcutter. A fox who was fleeing ahead of some hunters saw a woodcutter and pleaded with him to find a hiding place. The woodcutter promised to hide him in his hut and did so. Some moments later the huntsman arrived and asked the woodcutter if he had seen a fox in the vicinity. He replied in words that he had not seen one go past, but by signaling with his hands he indicated where the fox was hidden. The huntsman, however, took no notice of his gestures and simply took him at his word. After they had gone, the fox emerged from the hut without saying anything. When the woodcutter reproached him for showing no gratitude for having saved him, the fox replied, "I would thank you if your gestures and your conduct had agreed with your words." One could apply this fable to men who make protestations of virtue but who actually behave like rascals. 35. The Fox and the Crocodile. The fox and the crocodile were contesting their nobility. The crocodile stretched himself to his full length in illustration of his forebears and said that his forefathers had been all-round gymnasts. "Oh, there's no need for you to tell me," said the fox. "Just from looking at your skin, I can see that you have been doing gym exercises for so many years that you have quite cracked yourself." It is the same with men. Liars are caught out by their deeds. 36. The Fox and the Dog. A fox slipped among a flock of sheep and took hold of one of the lambs. He took it from its mother's teat and made as if to caress it. A sheepdog asked him, "Just what do you think you're doing?" The fox said, "Oh, I'm just teasing and playing with it." "Well, stop that at once," cried the dog, "or I'll show you what the caresses of a dog are like." This fable applies to the careless man and to the foolish thief. 37. The Fox and the Leopard. The fox and the leopard were having a beauty contest. The leopard boasted constantly about the marvelous variety of his coat. The fox replied, "How much more beautiful I am than you, for I am not varied merely in my body, but in my soul." This fable shows that ornaments of the spirit are preferable to a beautiful body. 38. The Fox and the Monkey elected king. The monkey, having danced in an assembly of the animals and earned their approval, was elected by them to be king. The fox was jealous, so, seeing a piece of meat one day in a snare, he led the monkey to it, telling... For fuck's sake. 38. The Fox and the Monkey elected king. The monkey, having danced in an assembly of the animals and earned their approval, was elected by them to be king. The fox was jealous, so, seeing a piece of meat one day in a snare, he led the monkey to it, saying that he had found a treasure. But rather than take it for himself, he had kept guard over it, as its possession was surely a prerogative of royalty. The fox then urged him to take it. The monkey approached it, taking no care, and was caught in the trap. When he accused the fox of luring him into a trap, the fox replied, "Monkey, you want to reign over all the animals, but look what a fool you are." It is thus that those who throw themselves into an enterprise without sufficient thought not only fail, but even become a laughing stock. 39. The fox and the monkey dispute their nobility. The fox and the monkey, travelling together, were disputing their nobility. Each of them enumerated his titles and distinctions along the way until they arrived at a certain location. The monkey rolled his eyes and began to sigh. The fox asked him what was the matter. The monkey indicated a number of gravestones nearby and said, "Ah, it is so difficult not to weep upon seeing these monuments to the slaves and freedmen of my forefathers." "Oh?" asked the fox archly. "Well, you may lie as much as you please, for none of them can arise to contradict you." It is thus with men. Liars never boast more than when there is no one about to contradict them. 40. The Fox and the Billy Goat. A fox, having fallen into a well, was faced with the prospect of being stuck there. But then a billy goat came along to the same well because he was thirsty and saw the fox. He asked him if the water was good. The fox decided to put a brave face on it and gave a tremendous speech about how wonderful the water was down there, so very excellent. So the billy goat climbed down the well, thinking only of his thirst. When he had had a good drink, he asked the fox what he thought was the best way to get back up again. The fox said, "Well, I have a very good way to do that. Of course it will mean our working together. If you just push your front feet up against the wall and hold your horns up in the air as high as you can, I will climb up on them and get out, and then I can pull you up behind me." The billy goat willingly consented to this idea, and the fox briskly clambered up the legs, the shoulders, and finally the horns of his companion. He found himself at the mouth of the well, pulled himself out, and immediately scampered off. The billy goat shouted after him, reproaching him for breaking their agreement of mutual assistance. The fox came back to the top of the well and shouted down to the billy goat, "Ha! If you had as many brains as you have hairs on your chin, you wouldn't have got down there in the first place without thinking of how you were going to get out again." It is thus that sensible men should not undertake any action without having first examined the end result.